Hello, this is Minder Chen. This is the second video on mastering Python programming with ChatGPT. And we're going to teach you Python programming as well as how to use ChatGPT to learn Python as a programming language, and certainly some of the tips and tricks of using ChatGPT in learning Python can be used in learning other programming language as well as other subject area. And in this lecture, we're going to focus on several things. First of all, if you look at here, there are three participants in this setting. One is the learner who's sitting in front of the computer and try to learn programming. And certainly you need to set up the Python programming environment. We mentioned Jupyter Notebook as an example of a programming environment for learning Python and writing and executing Python code. And the third element, which is brand new, is ChatGPT. You can use ChatGPT as an intelligent kind of tutor. So for example, you can ask ChatGPT and say, can you do greeting in Python? And ChatGPT can say, yeah, sure. And ChatGPT is actually very willing to figure out what you want to do, but certainly you want to give as clear as a prompt as possible. Sometimes they can understand simple command and try to kind of figure out what's the context, but sometimes they're not very good at it. So in this case, ChatGPT will say, yeah, okay, the code that you should write is print hello or hello world. And then you will go to Jupyter Notebook, and in the code cell, as we call it, and you will write print hello and run it and see what happened. So that's how this three participants can work together. If something doesn't work, and when you run it in Jupyter Notebook, you got an error message, you can come back to ChatGPT and say, hey, that code just doesn't work. You give me, or what I have written just doesn't work. And ChatGPT will try to figure out what's wrong. So if you look at here, there's several things we just mentioned to a certain extent. It is part of it. You can ask ChatGPT to write code for you, Python or other programming language. And secondly, sometimes the code generated you may not understand it. You can actually say, explain the code for me. And by the way, you don't have to say explain the previous code that you just generated for me. You can just explain the code. I think ChatGPT will figure out what you mean by that. And you can actually say, please insert your explanation as comment into the code. So instead of a separate explanation, which you can certainly put it in Jupyter Notebook as a markdown cell, but you can certainly insert that as part of your code, but as a comment, so it will not be executed. I would illustrate that for you. And when you write your own code, when you try the code generated, suggested by ChatGPT, there's something wrong, and you can just type the code that create a problem and probably error message coming from your programming environment, and just ask ChatGPT to figure out what's wrong with that. Okay. And after you have seen some example and tried out some code, and you want to just make sure you're really getting it, I think that's really important. You can basically ask ChatGPT and say, create assignment based on what we have just learned. And certainly you can give a more specific instruction, create assignment, and to make sure I know how to store something in an array and how to calculate the average based on the number stored in the array. You can be very specific, or you can a little bit vague, okay? So learn how to use this different feature in terms of using ChatGPT to learn programming. So in the following of this video, I'm going to show you how to do just that. Okay, let's get started. Let's look at the interface of ChatGPT once again. And as you can tell that I have actually a list of conversation that has already been created. So ChatGPT does save actually the conversation history. If you highlight a conversation like here, click on it, then you're going to see actually two little icons will show up. This pen icon will allow you to modify the label for the conversation, and this trash can icon would allow you to delete the conversation. I believe this clear conversation will delete all your conversation. Okay, and also if you have done a lot, then there's a scroll bar which allow you to scroll up and down. This will be your most recent conversation on the top. Okay, and you can click and create a new chat. Then usually it's recommended if you start a new conversation of a new task or line of questioning, then you should create a new chat. In a conversation, it consists of your question, instruction to ChatGPT and its response. There's an icon that show up here. In my case, I believe they take the first two character, my username, so it's MI. In your case, may be different. This icon is indicating the response from ChatGPT. Okay, and by the way, you can kind of provide feedback. It's encouraged you to provide feedback, whether this is a good response or not a good response. And by the way, everything you enter will be saved on the server, even you try to delete it here later, and it will be used for training. And your feedback certainly will contribute to a further training of ChatGPT. And another thing I want to show you is that for an existing, I got a lot of conversation, question and response, or prompt and response. If you move your cursor, watch carefully, and you'll find out an icon will show up. You see that? Which means if you click on it, you can revise your prompt and resubmit it. Okay, it will be saved and resubmit to regenerate the result. Okay, for the latest one, let me scroll down. Sometime for the latest response, usually there's something down here. Just say hello. Okay, and so sometimes they will have something say regenerate, but if you want to regenerate this and revise this, and click here to revise your prompt and click save and submit. Okay, and by the way, there's no features to allow you to delete an individual prompt and its associated response. So you can revise a particular question, resubmit it. If you really want to delete something, you pretty much have to delete the whole conversation. Okay, so keep that in mind. And let's continue from where we finished from last time and show you just a few more tricks or tips that you can use ChatGPT to help you to learn about Python programming. And last time, ChatGPT generate actually some code based on users entered age. We will print out a name. We will print out their name their age, and actually refer them by, tell them what's their designation based on some standard, like newborn child and things like that. And we learned a little bit of how to prompt the user and save their response in a variable. We also learned how to convert users enter data, which is treated as a string, into specific data type, such as an integer here. And then eventually we can print out, use print statement to print out the result. This if statement is basically just checking the range of their age, and then to decide what's their designation. Okay, I forgot to put my. Okay, so let's see what else we can do with what we have learned so far. And what I have done is I just said, well, create an assignment for me based on what I have just learned so far. Okay, so you can actually ask ChatGPT to create assignment, which is a great way to make sure you really learn what has been taught. So this is what has been generated. Okay, the assignment is personalized greeting program. It's a pretty simple one. Basically means ask you to ask user for their name, age, and the city of residence. And then also there's just, that's pretty much it. So eventually you will just print something like this out. So it's not really that difficult, okay? You can ask ChatGPT to do it for you. I strongly encourage you to try it yourself first. But if you want to compare notes in terms of what has been generated by ChatGPT, this you can say, can you do this for me? And by the way, I didn't say, can you do the previous assignment for me? I just say, can you do this for me? This is one of the features that ChatGPT can actually can understand the whole overall context of this particular conversation. So you don't have to repeat a lot of things that you have said in the previous line of question in this conversation. Okay. So this is what they have done. And let's do this. I can copy the code and then allow me to switch. So I'm using Jupyter Notebook, which is through Anaconda. And so I can come here and basically paste my code and run it. Shift Enter key. So I'll just say my name and my age. Let's say 30. And residency, I would just say California. Okay. Oh, this is city. We'll just say San Francisco, SA. Okay. So basically, that's what it is. Okay. Let me just make some minor change. Remember that int convert to integer. I want to convert that to integer, though technically speaking, in this particular application, I don't really need that because I don't need to compare the age to tell them whether this user is a teenager. Okay, so basically, I will. If you run it again, let's see what happened. Okay, I'm going to say Minder. I say 30, and I say San Francisco. Now you got a problem. Okay, they say, we just did a simple modification to our program, but they say, well, this line, this is the runtime error message. It's a data type error. And the most recent call last, which means that when they execute this line of code, there's an error. The error is that the program can only concatenate string, not integer to string. So basically, this is a string plus sign is concatenation symbol. Operation name is a string. That's a string literal in double quote. And that's an integer because we convert it into an integer here. Okay. And Python just cannot do it. So, but you wonder, then what should I do? You can copy the line of code that caused the runtime error and the error message. And then you come back here. Okay, I already done it. I say, this is the line of code. I don't even have to say this is the line of code. I say, that's the error message. Okay, then you run it. ChatGPT basically are telling you that this is an integer, okay, but it's treated as a string in the print function. And this is pretty much the error message, but stated much clearly. In Python, you cannot concatenate string and the integer using the plus sign operator, okay? They even give you suggestion how you fix this. You want to convert the value of age variable to a string. How do you do that? You use this string function, okay? Converting something inside the string function into a string. So that end up to be this. Convert the age into a string. Now you can concatenate all the strings together in a longer one. So that's pretty much it. So let's see how we can quickly, based on that suggestion, and fix our program. So once again, here, Linder, 30, San Fran, hit enter. So it come out, there's no error message. So this is just an example how we can use ChatGPT for debugging your program. Okay, if you got some error message, you definitely, if you really want to master programming skill, you need to learn how to debug, because we all make mistakes when we write program. Read the error message. Don't get scared by the error message. It's there to help you. But sometimes the error message can be difficult to understand, and then ChatGPT can be a good tool to help you to do that. So let's continue. I know better that there's a term we use called garbage in, garbage out. So the best way to safeguard the data quality of the data that you collected in your system is do error checking upfront, which is when user enter their data. Once again, garbage out, we call it GIGO, maybe called GIGO or GIGO. And they say, yeah, sure, why don't we do this? Okay, so this is very advanced, so I'm going to just briefly explain it. So ChatGPT basically changing that statement, wrap it around into a while statement, okay? While true, which is a loop. We haven't really talked about loop, but bear with me. In very introduction basic programming course, sometimes we kind of have to use some more advanced function or features to explain some basic new concept. So let's just move along. So basically, I'm going to go through this loop, and this is the block of code covered by this while loop. We call it while loop. While true, which means we will do this continuously because it's always true, by the way. Don't worry, it's not going to be an infinity loop. Here we say try, okay, which means we want to try to ask user for their age and try to convert what they enter into age, okay, so integer, if it is an integer. Okay, by the way, if what they have entered is not an integer, okay, then this exception clause will capture that runtime error. But instead of give you some runtime error message, we can customize the error message and say, sorry, that is not a valid age. Okay, please enter a whole number or an integer. Okay. If they enter something which is an integer, we convert it to integers, then what happened? Then we use this break. It's a reserved word, which we reserve by Python. You cannot use break as a variable to break out of this kind of infinity loop because it's while true. So you break out of it, you come here, okay? And by the way, how do we know this while loop cover the following statement I highlighted here? Indentation, okay, which means the space that you leave actually show the structure of a block of code. Sometimes we have multiple level of indentation. For instance, this, usually we use 4 space for one indentation. This is the whole try block, except block, but it's all under the while block. And under try, I can have several statements. I have 2, then I would further indent. Okay, this makes your code much more readable in terms of its kind of hierarchical structure. And also Python rely on this indentation to understand whether that's part of the loop or it's not part of the loop. Like this one is not part of the loop, okay? This is Python's way. Other programming languages do it differently. So you do need to pay extra attention to indentation. Some programming languages don't care about indentation at all. So eventually we will ask for city, etc. Okay, here I got that correct type conversion. So let's do this. I'll copy the code, and the best way to copy the code is actually use this copy code. Then come here. Okay, let me run it. What's your name? I'll intentionally make a mistake. I'm going to type something just like ABCD, which is not an integer. This is where you're in the loop. Okay, it's not an integer. There's a runtime error. It's captured by this try exception statement. Okay, when you try this, if it's an error, it will be captured by this exception clause. So then the error message would be displayed, and you're going to loop back. You're not going to follow the break. You're going to loop back, which is true, and then you will continue ask again. You will execute this statement again, okay? That's how internally the program is interpreted. And by the way, Python is an interpreted language. It's not a compiled language. Interpreted language can be less efficient in terms of executing it, but it's a great way to learn about a programming language because you can kind of execute the code almost line by line. So what is your age? This time we're going to give a proper integer. So it will be correct. Then they will come here, break, to break out of it. Then start asking me what is the city, break out of the loop. So I'll say San Fran. You say, hello, Minder, you're 30 years old and you're from San Francisco area. Okay. So that's pretty cool. This is certainly much more advanced construct that we use in writing error checking code or any statement in your program that may potentially generate runtime error, and you do want to capture that runtime error and handle it gracefully, as we call it, have your own more user-friendly error message and hopefully continue the process instead of quitting the program, then this is a good example. And by the way, they provide some explanation of the code. Okay. Let's pretend we don't know what this statement is about. This is also another feature in ChatGPT to learn about programming. A certain line of code, you just don't understand it and say, what is this int input? What is your age? Explain it for me. Okay. And here's the explanation. And certainly I explained it already. This, okay, they highlight the code. So they can kind of capture the keyword or key phrase, and they know which part of the question is your code. They didn't consider for me as part of the code, right? That's pretty smart. So the input is a function that's used to reuse the input from a command line. Okay, command line, just like the in Jupyter Notebook, just the prompt underneath your code. And so the prompt, we also call that prompt, prompting the user. Okay, this is different than ChatGPT's prompt, but it's also called prompt. So the program will display, what is your name? I mean, if you don't show the prompt, then you're waiting for user to enter something. They don't know what to enter. So sometimes we call this label. Okay, in some other user interface design, you need to create a label before a text box. And it's also called prompt. And int parenthesis is a function that's data type conversion from string to integer. Okay. They also give you an example. If you enter 25, which is really treated as a string, everything you enter through this input function is treated as a string. But we can convert it to integer if some of the calculation need to be done for variable that should be treated as integer. Okay. Let me just show you just one more things, and then we'll be done for this lectures. Okay. Here's an example of asking ChatGPT to write a program for you, and to if you give a very specific programming kind of description, okay, giving a description in some detailed fashion, okay, and sometimes can be very generic, by the way. Here, my question is, if you have a list or array of students' score and you want to calculate their average score, use the loop statement to do so. And specifically, you can use a for loop because I want to learn how to use for loop to iterate through the list of score, okay, or array of student score, and add each score to a variable total. And this is very specific. This is almost like writing program, by the way. Then we can calculate the average score by dividing the total, which accumulate all the score added up, by the number of score, how many students, basically. Number of score just implying the number of students who we have graded. This will give you the average score of a group of students. So this is a pretty long description. Then we'll find out that ChatGPT will generate the code for us. Okay, and this is actually the code. Okay, let's just copy the code. ChatGPT is very good whenever they generate programming code, they do put it in this kind of coding block and give you a copy functions to copy it to the clipboard. So let's try that out. Even you understand the program, it's always encouraged that you actually run the code in your programming environment, in this case, Python notebook. So basically, the code is that this is a list of integer stored as a score. It could be a floating point, by the way. And we need to initialize a variable called total to 0 because we want to accumulate all the score added up. So we call this initialization. We initialize the total variables value to 0. This is assignment statement. And then we go through a for loop. This for loop, you may be familiar with some for loop. They usually have an index from 1 to 3, 1 to 10, step by 2 or by 1 by default. And here, this is actually more advanced, which means this is a list. So basically, the statement is actually pretty intuitive. I have multiple score. I want to go through a loop, iterate through this score, one score at a time. So every time you go through this, you are going to fetch or read a particular score, one at a time, 85, 92, 79. So first time you go through this for loop, you are going to get 85. And then you're going to add that to the total. Okay, this means just adding the score to the total. Okay, this is equivalent, if I may, it's equivalent, it's a shorthand, abbreviated version of total plus score. Okay, and this is one of the, and by the way, we mentioned this assignment statement, this equal sign is an assignment statement. The whole thing is represent assignment statement. And so we're going to add the score to the total and then assign that new value, the new total, to the same variable to basically update the total. So we can kind of accumulate, summarize the total when we go through the loop. So eventually we will go through this how many times? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Every time we're getting a different score, 85, 92, 70, 79, 90, 100, and we're going to add it to total. So once we get out of the loop, we have that total. You can print out the total if you wish. You can just say print. We usually want to have some kind of prompt or label in front of the result. We'll say total equal, comma. Don't forget about string conversion, otherwise we'll get the same error message. So we can print it out. Sometimes without a better debugger, we use a lot of print statement to kind of try to find out what's the intermediate result. Okay, we don't need this for this assignment, but this is just for kind of debugging purpose. Then we can add this print statement. How to calculate average? Length is a built-in function for a list data type, which means how many elements, the length of the list, or the size of the list. In this case, it will return 5. So basically, it will be the total divided by 5. That will give us the average. So let's just run it. Okay. So the total is 445 and divided by 5, that's 89.0. Okay, and that's the result. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Okay, right? So you learn a little bit about how to look through a list of number you learn about when you need to added up some number on going through a loop. You need to initialize the total. It probably initialized by default to 0, but we cannot guarantee that in most of the programming language. So it's better to do it explicitly. And by the way, if you don't need this, you can comment it out, but still keep it because maybe later you need it. So we do use comment sometimes for this purpose. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Let's see what else we can do with ChatGPT. And by the way, ChatGPT generate the code and actually start explaining what this code is for. That's a great way to learn programming for beginning programmer. Okay, you can read this. That's pretty much what I just explained. And certainly I know the stuff, so I don't really need to read this back to you. But you're encouraged to try that out and get a version of your own and read it yourself. The only thing, if you want to almost repeat what I have done, is basically write something like this. Okay, and however, here's a trick that I use. I think it's a good feature. I say, yeah, that explanation is pretty good. There's several ways we can do this, by the way. If you want to truly document your code, I can copy this. This plus sign means add a cell, usually underneath my code. I can paste that explanation here. I'll change it to markdown, so it's kind of like a documentation. It's not part of the code, but it's part of the whole notebook that you have. And we use 3 or 4 pound sign and just say explanation. Code, hit enter key, hit shift enter to get out of it. So that's explanation of the code. So we kind of keep a record of the explanation generated by ChatGPT for future reference. You don't have to always go back to ChatGPT. However, there's actually another way to do this that I figured out is actually, I just say insert your explanation. I didn't say insert your explanation above in the code that you just generated. ChatGPT is very good in guessing the overall context of your instruction or your question. So you can save some trouble in terms of type something really lengthy to ask ChatGPT to do things for you. So insert your explanation as comment in code. So this is what has been generated. Define a list of student score. Okay, list. Okay, that's a specific building data type. Initialize a variable to store the total score. Okay, to store that in the total score. Use a loop, for loop, to iterate. They sometimes use the term iterate through the score. And here they even say add a current score. The current score when you go through the loop. Every time you go through it, the score will be different. So they specifically say the current score to the total. Calculate the average score by dividing the total by the number of score, which the length function will help us to do that. And eventually print out a score. Okay. So that's actually pretty cool, right? That's how you use ChatGPT. You can give it a problem set, the problem statement. They will try to generate the code for you. If there's some error message, you can ask them to debug it for you. And you can ask them to explain the code for you or a few lines of code for you. And then you can ask them to put their explanation as a comment in your code, so your code will be well documented. Okay, documentation of your program is a discipline in programming. Careful documentation is always a good practice, not just for yourself, but for someone else. So let me just copy this and keep a record of what I have done. So that's the result, okay? And one more thing before we finish. This is sometimes you wonder in Jupyter Notebook, where is this program saved? Okay, I haven't named this notebook, so let me just say this is okay. You can name it whatever. I'll just create an assignment. Hit enter. Oops. Somehow they don't like it. Okay. I think it has to be one word, no space, no special character. But you wonder, where is that Jupyter Notebook? Okay. One way to find out is actually you use import a library called OS, which is operating system. You print out, you use a function called get CWD, which is current working directory. And then the system will tell you what is the working directory that your programs are safe. Let me do the following. Okay. By default, it will be under the user in Windows system. It will be under the user directory, and this will be my username under that directory. So let me see whether I can find it for you. So if I'm here, I'm on C drive, the users folder, and then that's Minder. Then I can find, let me say they modify. So that's my program. It's actually, in this case, it's a root directory, a default root directory, and depends on your setup for your Jupyter Notebook. So if you want to copy it and give it to somebody else, upload it to your website, you need to know where that is. So this is always a nice feature. Sometimes I forgot how to do it. So it may be a good practice and put it in front of a lot of your notebook up front. You can also change the directory into another working directory if you wish. And then if you, in your code, if you save something to the current directory, it will be saved whatever the new current directory that you have just set. This means change directory, CH for change directory. I can change it back, okay? And actually, I was puzzled by this R in front of it. So I asked ChatGPT, they say, well, in Python, R prefix indicating it's a raw string. The reason is in Python, the backwards slash sometimes has very specific meaning. So, but when we specify the directory, we do use backward slash, and that will confuse this, the program. So the R just means it, just treat backward slash as a backward slash and execute it. I couldn't resist and just show you how backward slash may work in a simple example. Remember, we have this example here. We print this one really long, but if we want to actually print out hello world in one line and then print out the second string as a second line, one way to do it, you can separate this into two print statements. And each print statement's printout will be in one line. But another way is actually, I'm done with hello Minder. I can use something like /n. Since I have a line break, so I don't think I need the space. Let's see whether this will work. Okay, I'm not 100% sure. Minder, and then 30, Stanford. See, they say hello Minder. And they do have a line break. That's because of this escape sequence, okay? Escape code, which is a line break, okay? And so you're 30 years old and you're, if I print another print statement, just say test. This will be on a new line, so I don't really need to have a line break at the end of this print statement, previous print statement. So let's do that again. See, that's on a separate line. Okay, so this is about formatting of your print statements, content or parameter. Okay, that's it. I think we covered a lot. There's quite a few tips that I introduced today, and hopefully that's for you, useful for you. So I'll see you next time. Thank you.